So finally, after all of this time since the Hollywood Reporter revealed back on March 15th of 2024, a year ago essentially, that a Teen Titans live-action movie was a go at DC Studios, I can actually now take this a bit more seriously, given what we also learned from James Gunn not too long ago. And so, as you guys know how I kinda do best here on the channel, I feel free enough to have a good fat ramble about what could very well be coming our way in the future, or at least how they could adapt the DCU Titans with things that I absolutely would love to see. And again, for me, the biggest thing out of this is that it just feels so appropriate now, given the DC Studios slate refresh update that we got, where they talk about Titans. And speaking of, let's remind ourselves exactly what it was that James Gunn and Peter Safran said about the DCU Titans live-action movie. So Ana is working on a script. It's something she was really impassioned about. She turned over an amazing script to us. She's fiddling with that now. It's definitely not a finished script. Gunn added, I mean, it's interesting to see the way these things happen online, because certain things are thought of as, you know, reality, and other things are thought of as reality. But it was never like Daniel Craig was Sergeant Rock, you know? Other things you guys are right about. I mean, Ana Nogueira has been writing a Teen Titans script for a little while. It's very early stages, but, you know, we never announced that. We never said that, but it got out, and it's out there. You know, sometimes it goes wrong. So first of all, by the way, especially for big Titans fans in particular out there, that is actually incredibly encouraging news to receive as a fan wanting to see something like that in live action in the DCU. And what I mean is to hear that Ana Nogueira was literally impassioned about doing a Titans project is a really good thing, especially considering that she wrote a Supergirl script that was so good that James Gunn and Peter Safran virtually won't stop singing her praises. And also, despite the Titans script being described as not exactly finished right now, he still went as far to say that she turned over an amazing script to us. Now, all while this doesn't guarantee anything, of course, such as with the examples of the issues with the Authority and what is described to be setbacks with Wooler, but again, it's incredibly encouraging, and while I don't want to get mine or anyone else's hopes up too high, it does feel like, to me at least, there's a big likelihood that this script will be greenlit one day if things are going so well. Also, again, I may be biased here, but just the concept of a group Titans movie a few years down the line from now, I believe that has the potential to perform well if the DCU lands pretty decently with Superman, Lanterns, and Supergirl. Now, given that we learned about this a year ago and that the script is already, and I'm going to quote it again, amazing, and I know some of you would argue that Gunn would probably say that anyway. Yeah, Ana is described as fiddling with that now. It does make me wonder if they're maybe holding off on jumping the gun too fast with it for a variety of reasons. And what I mean by that is this could be to do with how, as we know from James Gunn himself, out of that same DCU slate refresher, that the DCU's Brave and the Bold Batman script is being written right now, and he's heavily involved with that himself. And perhaps with things being tinkered with along the way, this could maybe impact what Ana Nogueira could be doing with Titans. And that's not to say negatively impact it, by the way, but rather, given that the Brave and the Bold will be what I would say is the most opportune project in the DCU to bring to fruition this current status quo of this Batman and his Bat family, both projects in turn would kind of need to naturally sync up with one another with the flow of canon, so to speak, especially if they could be considering an appearance from a character like Dick Grayson in the DCU Batman movie. Let's just say, similar to that of the Son of Batman animated movie, where he interacts with Bruce and Damian Wayne. But then again, I know some people like to entertain, what if the DCU Teen Titans movie could be a prequel project in the DCU? And it's like, it totally could be, but for now, I don't think it will be. And before we continue on, because trust me, I've got a lot to say, I just want to remind you that I'd really appreciate, maybe, if you're still here watching this video, enjoying it, a click on that like button, and maybe consider subscribing, because apparently 52% of you keep coming back to these videos and you're not subscribed. So I know some of you hate these interruptions, but it goes a long way to support me on the channel, and I deeply, deeply appreciate that. And also, to be honest, it's not really my preference for the Titans project to be a prequel. For me, it would really make more sense to have the Teen Titans movie be set in roughly the present day DCU. And this way, you can, as we know for a fact with Brave and the Bold, flesh out the DCU Batman's progress through having a few extended Bat family members feature in the film when Damian Wayne rocks up for the first time. And again, just to say it, hey, if you like Dick Grayson in particular, guess what? He's going to have his own group, Titans Project, releasing sometime after this, that kind of thing. Or, of course, you could actually have the DCU Titans movie released before The Brave and the Bold, and perhaps this is unlikely, but to hypothetically argue if they wanted to do this or go this route instead, they really could, as of course, it's about the Titans, not Batman or the Bat family, and so it will follow the Titans characters in the present-day DCU, and there's nothing strictly wrong with them having a self-contained adventure set right before the events of Damian rocking up in the Batcave. And then, of course, again, you could see Nightwing appear after the events of the film in the Brave and the Bold movie when the time comes. And I just wanted to throw that idea in there just because, projects like Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, written by Ana Nogueira, the same writer as this movie, was so ready and gearing to go. Everything just went so smoothly with it that it's already in production right now compared to what they had initially thought. Same thing with Mike Flanagan's Clayface script. So just never say never with other projects even like this. And while we're on this front, just as to when or how we could see the Titans be adapted in this way, in the way it could make sense in the DCU, it's just that I think marketing-wise, from where I'm standing here, launching a DCU Batman first in cinemas, in where Batman obviously is a pretty damn popular character that will draw eyes and attention and hopefully popularity in the box office from the general audience. So then, you kind of think if Nightwing appeared in The Brave and the Bold first in a supporting role in a movie that you could easily include him in, just the narrative of it makes sense, it would be a seamless and natural advertisement for, once again here, just to repeat it, hey, by the way, said general audience person, did you like this dude? Well, guess what? We actually plan on doing more with this guy. But with that being said, I do still want to leave the door open to any possibility of adaptation, especially given that when the Titans were first introduced in the comics, it was funnily enough in The Brave and the Bold comic issue 54, going on to be called the Teen Titans. And Dick Grayson in those early stories was indeed in his Robin armor, very much so in his Robin days. But I do obviously think if you want Grayson to still be in his Robin armor in the live-action DCU and to follow some of that earlier Titans chronology, that would be in the prequel territory, given that we're at the point with Batman and his Bat family and where Damian Wayne is arriving. Grayson would be well beyond the point of wearing his Robin armor even in the most lenient adaptation there. But what's the way I kind of envision all of this? Well, I mean, all while I look forward to the comic book accuracies of the DCU, I also anticipate what they'll mix up. So essentially for me, the Teen Titans movie could see us launch into the film with Dick Grayson already as Nightwing. A young, comic book accurate aged Nightwing at that. So no offense, Brenton Thwaites, I love you, but not a 30-ish year old Robin becoming Nightwing, but perhaps around 18 to 22 years old. I mean, we're going to be experiencing a fantastical DCU after all, in where Gunn is, again, adapting Damian Wayne, and you know my thoughts on that, a little ninja, genuinely young kid ninja assassin Damian Wayne, so I'd like to think for once we're going to be getting more accurately aged Bat family members, of course including Dick Grayson. And so it could just be the case that the Titans have already been operating in the DCU ever since Dick Grayson was Robin, not too many years into the DCU's past. So the DCU history, as we'll come to know it, could still adhere to the mostly traditional sense of Grayson going off with the Teen Titans increasingly more and more during his days as Robin. Eventually, he feels as though he's outgrowing the Robin role, so to speak, and as a result, he wants to take on more of a separate gig to that of Batman, essentially kind of getting out of Batman's shadow. But of course, they could still do the more post-crisis Batman, kind of basically firing Dick Grayson. Not too much bad blood, but you know, the more angsty version of it. But bottom line, all I'm trying to say is, all of this, for me, with the way that I see it, can still strongly adhere to Gunn's overall status quo in the DCU. And that is how heroes and villains have operated for a long time already. We're hitting the ground running. We all know that by now. I mean, with us knowing from Gunn and Safran that there is going to be a form of extended Bat family in the DCU already, and in their own words, they feel like the Bat family's been neglected too long on the cinema screen. And as I keep saying, like, well, duh, I know I keep bringing this up, but especially with Damian Wayne coming into the fold, you're gonna have that. It makes sense to have already had Dick Grayson be involved with the Teen Titans in the not too distant past. It's just by the time we launch into the DCU and this Ana Nogueira Teen Titans live action movie, we could just already be at the point in where they've been here, done that before, but are still early on enough in their team's journey that they've still got pretty much their entire story and adventures to go. And not to mention, with the whole adaptations don't copy and paste thing, you could still have some stories that traditionally happened before Dick Grayson became Nightwing earlier on in the comics be saved for this movie, or just in the present day DCU, even when he's already Nightwing. This is what I mean. You're never going to literally rip from the comic book page to the silver screen when you're adapting things. So it's more of an influential vibe, and that's the way I think that it would work best. But on that note, let me know if you'd want it to be a prequel set roughly 3 to 5 years into the past of the present day DCU, with maybe Grayson emerging as a leader in his Teen Titans group. Just assuming, by the way, that Nightwing in the present day DCU is no older than 22, that is. So again, 3 to 5 years before that, he was probably like Robin in the Teen Titans. Or would you like us to visit the present day Titans, still led by Dick Grayson, of course, maybe, you know, only recently having come into Nightwing in the grand scheme of things, still young, and the group have still also yet to be tested by their most challenging threats. It's just that we've kind of skipped past a couple of things, but that's kind of true for most things in the DCU, to be honest. Like, we're already a few years into Superman's career. How many years? We're quite a few years into Batman's career. Like, it's the same for a lot of heroes out there, and that's just something a lot of people need to accept. All while I wouldn't rule out some origins, of course. But moving on now, what about the Teen Titans roster or the lineup? Well, for me, I would be very, very happy if the very core original group were there. Now, having said that, I absolutely don't expect a rip for rip, copy and paste. You know, you don't need me to hammer it in even more. But quite often when adapting teams or groups, even when it came to the Creature Commandos in the DCU, Gunn didn't use every single last original member. So, you know, I wouldn't want to get any expectations up myself for, let's say, Aqualad to be guaranteed in the lineup for Ana Nogueira's Teen Titans movie. But for me, obviously, Nightwing is a given, given what I dove into earlier, but also Donna Troy's Wonder Girl and Wally West's Kid Flash. But obviously, as comics evolve throughout the decades and the years and years since the early Titans, we got the new Teen Titans comic in the 80s, with, of course, Wally, Dick, and Donna Troy. They kind of did away with Aqualad, but we saw the introduction of Cyborg, and of course, Raven and Starfire. We also had Beast Boy, or the Changeling back then, but he really appeared in the Doom Patrol back in the 60s. But my point is, the team more familiarly became known as Dick, Donna, Wally, Raven, Starfire, Cyborg, and Beast Boy. But the question is, and again, it really is, when I get this far into my ramble, crazy to remind myself that there's a legitimate DC Studios DCU Teen Titans movie being written right now. And the script is apparently amazing. So now I'm like, oh my god, we could actually see these characters, and which lineup could we really get, and which route, and what ideas is Ana Nogueira really gonna go for? So I'm like, okay, well, in theory, we could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours about this. And I'm not sure if they're going to adapt every single one of them and just make it a really big group movie. You know, sometimes when you do that, you get criticism of neglect of some characters that the audience would have loved to have seen more of. But then again, movies like this do exist. Whether that even be, you know, Gunn's The Suicide Squad. You literally had quite a few characters in that film. Not that I'm saying that the DCU's Titans will be like the Suicide Squad, but I'm just trying to counter what I was just kind of briefly getting into, in how I hope that Ana Nogueira can find a way to do a script that involves all of those biggest and arguably most popular characters, which serves them all in a way that most fans are happy with. That's no small feat to accomplish. So with projects like that, it is kind of inevitable that certain characters will take starring roles over others, so Nightwing being an obvious one. But I think that people kind of expect, if it's well written, that it's understandable that not everyone can get their main arc of the movie moment. So all of that is to really just say that, yeah, I hope that each one of these characters can be adapted, but it would be curious to know what your cutoff point is, because when I say each one of these characters, I'm not necessarily including, you know, Aqualad, Speedy, you know, Roy Harperlight, and every other one that has ever been involved with the Teen Titans in any iteration. At some point, you are going to have to kind of cut it off to a certain team size. But it's also important to remember that even if not every single one that you want is to be adapted in this movie, there could be a ton of exposition, teasers, references, and more explored in the movie, especially with what I got into earlier, with how Grayson could have been operating with this team ever since he was doing somersaults in his Robin armor with Batman. So all I'm trying to say is, for example, perhaps Garth's Aqualad was a thing in the past. It's just since then, he has dipped. For me, though, I think my priority would indeed be Wally West and Donna Troy, other than the obvious Dick Grayson and whatnot. So I think that given, for me, when talking about these two characters specifically, given that we aren't getting a mainline Flash project in the DCU for a hot minute, given what Gunn said not so long ago, and whether you agree with it or not, business-wise, the Flash movie did scare Warner Brothers, that absolutely doesn't mean we can't get a Kid Flash speedster in Ana Nogueira's Teen Titans script. I think this would be so freaking awesome as well. And I know I've said this a ton, but we're gonna have a DCU in where heroes and villains have existed for a long time. You know, we went over how Superman's been out there for a little while. Batman's been out there for even longer. Do we really think that Barry Allen, the Scarlet Speedster, hasn't been speeding around the place? So Wally West Kid Flash feels really tangible for me, and all while he's not necessarily remotely removed from Barry, including a different speedster in a completely different type of movie like this could be a really smart play on how to still have a cinematic universe speedster in some way, shape, or form. And I would absolutely take that. Plus, technically, the Creature Commandos showrunner did say that Kid Flash Wally West, in an answer to the interviewer, was in that future vision from Alana Rostovic in Creature Commandos. So he's out there, and, you know, maybe he's a part of the Titans. As for Donna Troy, I think she's just awesome. Say what you will about the DC Universe streaming service Titans show, but years ago now, the introduction of Connor Leslie's portrayal of Donna Troy is what really put me down the rabbit hole of research for her character when reviewing that show, and I've become attached ever since. Like, in terms of any future lineup with the Titans, I would want her to be in it. Again, who knows when this DCU Titans movie will really come out, but it's not outside the realms of possibility here either to believe that, given Wonder Woman would have been around for a very long time, just given who her character is, that she would also have a sidekick that could be in this team. Now, Starfire, well, I mean, you know, talking about Creature Commandos, we've already seen her in the DCU. Granted, it was in Princess Alana Rostovic's future Doomsday vision, but hey, like, technically, since they averted that vision, it still means that Starfire is, like, around in the present-day DCU's Earth. And again, I'd like to think that including characters, those specific characters in that vision, that they're kind of saying like, hey, you might see this character in live action one day coming to a TV screen or a cinema screen near you. As you literally had other characters in that vision that you have seen or will be seeing, from Peacemaker, Vigilante, Judo Master, Supergirl. You're getting her in Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, Damian Wayne, The Brave and the Bold, the Trinity. Now, I am probably looking too far into that, but yeah, I think Starfire would be a very safe bet for this movie, and I think if anything, fans would be pissed if she wasn't in it. It would kind of be a big head scratcher. Now, Cyborg, for sure, I would love that. We were even meant to get a Cyborg movie, weren't we? Or was it a Cyborg Flash movie back in the day in the DCEU? But obviously things went south in all different directions back then, and with like Ray Fisher, I'd like to think that it's been enough years for Warner Brothers to not hold back that character for any reason or another like they're doing right now with The Flash. And after all, like Javan Wade on Doom Patrol, he did such a good job with Cyborg on that show, so hell yeah, I'm optimistic that Cyborg would indeed make the cut. Now, as for Raven, I think she's pretty much a guarantee, just through the sheer popularity of the character. I mean, I would even go as far as saying that a lot of people know what Raven looks like without even knowing who she is, because she kind of got so mainstream, even from like the cosplay space. But yeah, considering like Raven, her history in the comics, new Teen Titans, freaking there she is. It would be a head scratcher if she wasn't there. Beast Boy, yes, please. Yeah, I don't really have much to add on to Beast Boy there, but I feel like he's pretty synonymous for a lot of people with the group. So I would love to know your guys' thoughts on the lineups and whatnot. I know there might be a bit of debate there, but try and keep your expectations grounded to like not going overboard with too many characters that they would include in the movie, and truly try and define what lineup you think they might genuinely go with everything we've roughly covered already. But lastly, for this rambly, how could they adapt the Titans-esque kind of video and things that I want to see, who would I like to see the Titans face as a threat in the movie? Man, there's quite a few to choose from. Like, clearly you have Starfire's sister, Blackfire. Of course, there's others like Dr. Light, Gizmo, Hive, to even crazy threats like Brother Blood and Trigon. Now, I don't want to be too typical here with my choice, but it's such a burning desire for me. And I actually think some people might think that the typical choice for a movie iteration, the first movie actually for Titans, would be to dive into Raven and do the whole Trigon thing. But for me, while, don't get me wrong, seeing a threat like that would be a cool movie villain to see, and if anything, something that's kind of hard to balance when writing a team like this is their power scaling. Like, what threat do you use against a team of heroes with various powers to the point of where they're basically freaking OP? Well, yeah, you'd kind of need to throw a lot at them. But for me, and my choice, This villain has actually been thought to have been someone else's villain entirely more and more in recent years, with more and more forgetting that they actually go back to the Titans. And I didn't intend to do all this setup, but I would abso-freaking-lutely love Deathstroke, the Terminator, to be the villain of Ana Nogueira's Teen Titans live-action movie. Now, obviously, I have to be broad here because it's not like we could remotely know what the nuances are in the plot. Perhaps there's a couple of villains that are even used. Maybe there's a day in the life of encounter with Gizmo or Dr. Light, but there's a larger build-up to Deathstroke. Who knows? But overall for me, Slade Wilson is the Titans villain. And that's kind of what I was getting into a minute ago. A lot of people outright think that Deathstroke is a Batman villain, and I'm not trying to sound gatekeepy here, by the way, because, absolutely, give us more Batman versus Deathstroke stories. I am all for that. But the roots of this character are literally such that Marv Wolfman and George Perez created him as a Titans villain, first appearing in the new Teen Titans in the 80s. The great thing about Deathstroke is also that he's so formidable to go up against for the Titans, and yet he isn't something completely mental like Trigon, right? He's superhuman, incredibly intelligent. His tactics challenge all of the young heroes who, despite all of their power and all of their training with Batman, Wonder Woman, and whoever, they've still got a long way to go. And maybe that could even be a part of the plot of the movie, right? Like, Slade up against all of these powerful Titans, he's still able to do that. And I'm not discrediting Slade here. He is very smart, and that's how he can go up against people like Starfire and Raven and whatnot. But their inexperience can also be quite a learning curve for a threat like this. But also, perhaps he's working with Hive. And I'm not saying that they have to do the Judas contract and have Terra infiltrate the Titans. And as I keep waffling on about, I'm sure Ana Nogueira will be innovating on a bunch of different ideas being used as inspirations and just overall influences in the script, in the exact same way, really, as to how Superman is really an amalgamation of a bunch of different comic book influences, right? And really, so far, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is one of the only one, I think, right now that is mostly adapting a singular comic book storyline. So with that being said, who knows what could really be tossed in the time script from the comic books? But all I know is that I want the antagonist of the film to be centered around Deathstroke. I think also, despite how diabolical a villain can be, it's always exceptionally powerful and, in my opinion, a much better execution when you add more dimensions to them and allow the audience, for example, to feel some form of empathy for them. So perhaps one of Deathstroke's motivations should be, the loss of his son, Grant Wilson, who was, of course, the first Ravager. Maybe similar to that of the comics, he takes out a contract to kill the Titans. He takes the serum that his father had, but through using his powers too much, it kills him, and thus Slade blames the Titan. I'm sure it would be adapted a lot more complex than that, because in the comics, it kind of is like Grant's kind of annoyed that the Titans screwed up, from what he saw, a relationship with his girlfriend. So right, I'm gonna get And if they remotely did anything like that, I'm sure Ana Nogueira could add so many layers to it. But the root of it is, the more personal, the better. Especially if you add into the mix that if we were to hypothetically assume that the Titans have operated since the days of Dick Grayson being Robin, which again would be comic accurate. It's just we didn't necessarily see that past in the DCU. And who knows what unintended skeletons they could have in their closet, or villains out there that they're not even really aware of, who want to settle a score, like how Deathstroke is just so primed and ready to go after them. That's just one idea, by the way. It could be a bunch of Deathstroke motivations. Now, as we all know, there is a major trade report about a Bane and Deathstroke-esque project in the work, which could really be something larger than just a Bane Deathstroke thing. And Gunn and Safran have somewhat acknowledged at the DC Studios press address that this is somewhat of a real thing. Even if that is a different project, it could still somewhat backdoor Deathstroke into the world of the DCU and hopefully the Titans. I mean, for me, it's a proper fingers crossed situation. And on just the larger note here, I know some of you, if not many of you, might actually disagree with me. Maybe you would like this villain, this plot, or that plot. So do let me know in the comments what your suggestions would be for the antagonist of the Titans film. But for now, even though I could ramble for a lot longer, I think I'm going to leave this Titans video there. I mean, to be honest, I hope that this is the first video in a long list of videos to come as we hopefully learn more things of substance as the project moves further into development, which I have a good feeling about because, you know, Ana Nogueira seems to be doing very, very well over at DC Studios. But for now, I just wanted to speak out into existence the vibes I'm getting with how the DCU could handle this, some ideas of what I'd want, how they could adapt things. So now it's just really time for me to turn this around on you. What do you guys want out of Ana Nogueira's Titans script? But if you made it to this part of the video, guys, you know what I'm going to say. I would deeply appreciate a like. It really does go a long way. So if you've made it this far, if you're on your phone, your TV, whatever it is, hit that like button. Obviously, consider subscribing. Double check that button because you might be enjoying the content here. Think that you're subscribed, but you might not actually be. I hope that the Titans fans out there enjoyed this one. But until next time, guys, again, thank you so much for your support. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow Titans in the next video. Goodbye.